What is up, everybody? Welcome to this week's episode of the Dense Pixels podcast. I am one of your hosts, Brad, joined by my co-host, Carrie.
What's up?
No Micah this week. He is busy doing some other stuff. Look, I'm very excited. There were two major pieces of news that happened in fields adjacent to this podcast, things that we talk about on this podcast that aren't video games. And so I knew the post office was going to be a rip-roaring good time this week. So we have a little bit of an extended post office session just because we knew that the news was light. The news is light, but it's impactful. And of course, Carrie's been playing Persona 3 Reload, which I'm curious to get her thoughts on. So we will get to that later in the show. Before that, a quick bit of housekeeping as per usual. Don't forget to sign up for our Discord by going to densepixels.com/fans and joining there so you can touch base with our community and ask us questions that we answer on the post office. Don't forget to subscribe to us either on YouTube by going to youtube.com/densepixels or on the podcast app of your choice. Just search for Dense Pixels there, or both. You know, you don't have to choose. You can do both things. It's free to do. As well as all the other TNP Studio shows that you can find out there. And of course, you can join Premium for just $5 a month or $50 for a full year by going to densepixels.com/premium to get access to the slate of TNP Studios premium content. All right, so let's start. Let's get the shit out of the way first. Now, disclaimer: we neither of us have played Suicide Squad: Kill the Justice League.
And I don't plan to.
Yeah, nor do I. You know, these impressions are based off of what I've seen and read, and what Carrie's seen and read across the industry, and also just looking at metrics, because I think that in this day and age, we can look at trends from games that came before and make educated guesses as to what will happen in the future. So again, like Suicide Squad: Kill the Justice League, you know, not the worst game that ever came out. Which I guess is an accomplishment, because I think people are definitely talking about it like it was going to be.
Right. But it's also not very good?
No, it's also not very good. So currently, it has a Metacritic score of 62, critical score. For context, Marvel's Avengers had a 67. Anthem had a 59. So look, we're in the Marvel's Avengers Anthem range.
We're right in the zone of bullshit live service games people didn't want to play. And if the concurrent user numbers for Kill the Justice League are any indication, this is another live service game that no one wants to play, because the player count topped out at just under 13,500, which is not a lot of people, especially for a DC property.
Well, and again, let's view these numbers in context. Marvel's Avengers reached a peak concurrent of 31,000 players on Steam. Gotham Knights got to 24,000 concurrent players on Steam. Here's the shocker of all: if I gave you a list of And Carrie, I know you're looking at the article, so don't actually answer the question, but you, hypothetical listener, if I gave you this list of games, so Suicide Squad, Marvel's Avengers, Outriders, Gotham Knights, Guardians of the Galaxy, Destiny 2. Obviously, Destiny 2 is going to have the highest peak concurrent users out of that list. But what game do you think would be the second? And would it shock you to learn that Outriders, out of that list of games, had the second highest concurrent peak? Because Outriders is actually kind of good. Really? Like, it didn't get a lot of play, but it was a good game. I played Outriders. It was fun. But again, this, you know, obviously we had to put the thought in there that, hey, this is just Steam concurrence. Obviously, it's not tracking PlayStation players. It's not tracking Xbox players. I can't imagine that you're going to see like a huge, I highly doubt that PlayStation saw a peak concurrent user count of like 250,000 people.
No, and it's extremely doubtful that it would be that much of a stretch. And like, to put this into even more perspective, Monster Hunter World came out 5 years ago, almost 6 years ago now.
Yes.
2018. Within the last half hour, how many concurrent players do you think Monster Hunter World had?
Well, so Monster Hunter World is having a moment.
It's having a, Capcom's doing their push to return to World, but like, at the end of the day, it is still a game that is older, right?
Correct.
And Monster Hunter is still something that I think ultimately still has more niche appeal in the mainstream than DC Comics.
Well, I was going to bring up another game, by the way, but so let me guess. So last half an hour, I'm going to say 80,000 for Monster Hunter World.
That's closer to the 24-hour peak of this game. So within the last 24 hours, the highest player count was, excuse me, 89,322. 35 minutes ago, it was 29,700, which is still more than double what the peak was.
Here's another fun one. So a game that was not at all on my radar that also came out last week. That I'm actually, like, I've looked into and I'm like, oh, it actually looks like it might be my fucking jam. Is Grand Blue Fantasy Relink, which is a new action RPG that came out from the folks that made Grand Blue Fantasy Versus, which is a fighting game. This is not a fighting game. This is an action role playing game that apparently the end game is basically like Monster Hunter, essentially, which is cool. So again, very niche title, very Japanese-centric title, so you wouldn't expect high PC numbers. You would expect probably more console numbers in that regard. That game had a concurrent player count peak over the weekend of 140,000 players on Steam. and that's a game with very little marketing, very little name recognition. Again, like me, I'd fucking do a weekly video game podcast. I hadn't even heard of that game that was coming out before it released, and that game did literally, 12 times what Suicide Squad did. And again, you're like, oh, well, who gives a shit? You know, it's Suicide Squad. Like, why does that matter? It matters because this is a live service game. It matters because this is a game that's supposed to be supported with additional content, supported with, seasonal releases that they want players to keep coming back to over and over again. And I watched Skill Up's 45-minute review, which is an excellent review, and you should definitely check it out, is why he doesn't recommend the game. The end game of this, once you get past the 10-hour story, is literally just like the same 3 missions over and over and over again. And they're not, and those missions apparently are not even like Destiny Strike caliber missions. Because that was the big criticism when Destiny came out, is that, the end game, there wasn't a ton to do. Like, there was the raid, but that, if you didn't have a raid party, it's kind of hard to do that. There was PvP. But if you did single player and you didn't raid, well, all you pretty much had to do was to run strikes. And the strikes are cool, but they get a little repetitive when you run them over and over and over again. But those are at least, like, handcrafted, like linear missions that you can play that are literally there to be, great, good content that somebody made. Not just like fucking open world MMO bullshit of like, hey, go here, destroy these things, collect these things, kill these guys, yada, 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 et cetera, et cetera. And like I said, and that's your model. What are you going to do to get people to come back and play your game? Assuming they even play it in the first place, because again, the reviews, the user reviews are higher than the critic reviews are. Like, people that are playing it seem to be enjoying it for what it is. But are they still gonna be playing it a month from now? Are they still gonna be playing it 3 months from now, 6 months from now? And how much rope is WB going to give the studio? Like, how much are they gonna try to, like, how much good money do they throw after bad, basically? Because again, this game had a 9-year development cycle. And if you're seeing numbers like this on release weekend, then I can't imagine WB is going to want to reinvest a ton more money and a ton more development into whatever's coming for this game in its future. So,
nothing good.
Yeah. So it's sad. And again, I really hope this doesn't result in the closure of Rocksteady. And again, the game, it's funny because the production value of the game, like the cutscenes, the graphics, how the game runs.
Looks good.
Yeah, like it's peak like Rocksteady. Like, the facial animations are great. The performances are really solid.
But it doesn't matter how good a game looks if it isn't fun to play.
Yeah.
And if they haven't come up with a fun, rewarding gameplay loop, then people aren't going to fucking play it.
Nope. So, if you guys have been playing this, any of you, and I haven't heard anyone in the Discord say that they have been, I'd be curious to know what you think of it. So again, denspixels.com/fans. If you're not a member of our Discord, because
one of the dozens of people playing this
right,
game.
I'd like to. I'm curious to know if there's something there. But again, like, even the reception of this game has been so meh. like, you know, money is money. I don't care about spending. Time I do care about spending. And so even if this game is like,
I would say it's almost worse that it's kind of a meh game.
Yeah.
Because by being a meh game, then you don't even have people who are like streaming it and playing it, you know, for the shits and giggles to laugh at how bad it is, right? By just being like astonishingly mediocre, no one cares about it. Like it's not even worth hate playing. Right?
But that's what I'm saying. Like, even if this game is $30 in 2 months, I'm not gonna care because like I don't even invest the time that it takes to play this to experience the 10-hour story in this game. So we'll see what happens. Yeah. But my confidence level is not high that they're going to be able to make anything out of this. I think it was just last week, we talked about the makers of the day before lashing out, complaining about the only reason that their game failed was because of bloggers and content creators,
haters,
that were out there just to shit on the game. And if it wasn't for them, we would have had a successful game. Turns out, maybe not so much, because the studio that developed this game, fantastic, mistreated their employees. I know you're shocked to hear this, listener out there. There's a German gaming PC outlet called GameStar that published a report on their YouTube channel that is based on accounts from 16 former employees at the studio. One volunteer, because again, remember they love to solicit volunteer work from their folks, and then 7 employees from the publisher Mytona, who published the game. Couple highlights they talked about. Apparently, allegedly 2 voice actors were made to pay a fine of $1,930 US for turning in, quote, low quality voice recordings for the game, because you know that's what you do when someone does bad work, you fine them at work. That's a thing that's okay. And then essentially one of the founders of the studio just announced an employee's dismissal, attributing it to their, quote, lack of will. That's why he had to let them go, because they lacked will. Apparently, even when working from home, workstations were always monitored, and employees could be contacted at all times, which caused, quote, enormous psychological stress, according to sources. And a lot of sources said that they worked for 16-hour days with no weekends or time off as well, because of course the studio was crunching as well.
Right. Fuck them.
Yeah, fuck them. Like I hope these guys never get to develop a game. These two studio heads never get to develop anything ever again, because not the best managers apparently. So to state it plainly. Another big piece of news that came out. So Blizzard, of course, parted ways with former boss Mike Ybarra, who left Blizzard and Microsoft in the culling that was going on with a lot of the folks in Microsoft's gaming division last week. Their new president is going to be Joanna Faries, who used to be the head of the Call of Duty franchise under Activision. She also spent 12 years working for the NFL as well in an executive role there. That's very interesting that they are going this direction. Blizzard does not strike me as a studio that would that really should have a suit running it, and maybe that's because they never have. Like they've never been a studio that's had someone like a corporate executive at the top of the food chain. But again, maybe because of all the issues that Blizzard has had over the past several years, maybe this is actually just the right person. Like, it's kind of like when you, if you have hockey, like in hockey, right? Like, if you have a player's coach who's not performing well, you bring in, like, the fucking ball buster, you bring in the John Tortorella, and he often, helps turn the team around. Now, that person usually doesn't last in the role very long because that wears thin pretty quickly. But in a short-term state, this could actually be a really good move for Blizzard to get someone in there that isn't part of the quote unquote Blizzard culture, as it were. Right. What are your thoughts on that?
It's interesting that this news is coming out also at the same time that Jason Schreier announced his new book, which is going to be about the rise and fall of Blizzard as a company, right? So it's It's interesting. You know, he did an interview with Forbes that really sort of highlighted this dissonance that was created at Blizzard after they were purchased by Activision, because at the end of the day, Activision was a company that wanted, you know, reliable, annualized games being put out. Of course, Call of Duty being the big one for them, of course. There's new Call of Duty every single year. Whereas Blizzard, prior to their acquisition by Activision, it's always a company that like was very much like, these games are going to take the time that they take, and they're going to come out when they come out, and we're not going to rush it. And we're not going to push ourselves, and it's like very much a it'll be done when it's done kind of company, right? And even before the former Call of Duty general manager was tapped to be president, Blizzard, following their acquisition from Activision, had a number of, I guess you would qualify them as maybe missteps or fumblings, due to having to adapt to this different kind of company culture of like, you got to be putting stuff out on the regular. And so I kind of wonder if this is just going to end up with more of that happening. Like, I don't think this is going to help Blizzard return to form, or however you want to call it. I honestly think this is the kind of person who's going to still push Blizzard to be like, you got to be putting games out like every other year. Like, you have to have something new. And I think ultimately Blizzard's products are going to suffer further as a result.
Yeah.
That's just sort of my vibe of this. So
her reaction, like the email that she sent out to staff and the stuff that she's talked about in public since the news was announced, she's saying the right things. Like, she's saying that, like, hey, like, I understand that there's going to be questions and maybe even concerns with someone like me stepping into this role. But saying that, like, hey, I understand that, like, Blizzard is not Call of Duty. Like they make different games. They have different cultures, different communities. Look, I've been around enough executive leadership change to know that a lot of executives come in saying that, and that's just to kind of until they get their feet settled, and then they start kind of molding things in their vision. She also has a background with Call of Duty. Like, she started with them with esports, so that's an interesting point of historical background, especially as Overwatch has suffered in the esports sense since the closure of the Overwatch League and how that's fallen off quite a bit. It's interesting. It's interesting. And again, one of the other big problems that Blizzard has is really right now they have 3 franchises that are still kind of pumping it out, and those franchises already have somewhat defined release cadences. Like, obviously World of Warcraft, you're going to get a big expansion every 2 years, right? Diablo has turned into a live service game, which it seems like we're going to be getting annual, like, major expansions and then seasons every 3 months aside. And then Overwatch is in a bit of a weird state of flux right now. Obviously Overwatch 2 came out last year or 2 years ago. And that was not met by the community very well. So, but that's what you have right now. And I don't know what else is in the hopper. I guess Hearthstone is still out there too, but that's also kind of doing its own thing. I feel like that's trailing off a little bit too, just from kind of my sense of it. But yeah, so will be interesting to see how she shakes things up, and it'll be interesting to see how Blizzard, the developers, respond to that. And again, maybe it's a good thing not having one of your bros being the person that's running the company, especially considering all of the issues that have been happening in Blizzard over the past very many years, aside from the game development side of things. So,
yep, not great.
Let's take a short break. We'll be back with a little bit of Microsoft discussion and then some Persona 3 Reload talk. So this was kind of late breaking news of sense that came out today. But apparently Microsoft. Was it yesterday? Well, it's a weekend. It doesn't count.
Look, whatever.
Microsoft may be considering letting a lot of their exclusive titles off the leash and heading to PlayStation. So there's reports that have been coming out saying that Microsoft is seriously considering a lot of their first-party Xbox games to head to competitor PlayStation, games like Starfield, games like the upcoming Indiana Jones.
So far, what has been named has been Starfield, Bethesda's upcoming Indiana Jones game, Sea of Thieves, and Hi-Fi Rush, which of course was a bit of a sleeper hit last year. And I believe Hi-Fi Rush was tapped for Switch.
That one doesn't surprise me as much because, again, Microsoft and Nintendo have been getting cozier here lately.
Also true, yeah. But there has been an understandable, I think, the more that I thought about it, the more I was sort of like, no, I kind of get it. Bit of a backlash from Xbox fans about these console exclusive titles no longer being console exclusive, especially going to PlayStation. I feel like everyone can sort of give, Nintendo a bit of a pass, right? But it's different, I think, with PlayStation. And at first I was like, why are people so mad? And then again, Gene Park, my buddy at the Post, the way that he framed it makes a lot of sense, which is like, why are people getting mad that their game is on a different plastic box? Well, because if $500 meant a lot to me, and it means a lot to a lot of people, it's no small amount of money, particularly in this fucking economy. I'd be salty to invest it on the plastic box that only had Starfield, but not FF7 Remake or Spider-Man, when instead I could have spent it on the box that does have all of those things. So, for a lot of people, they do not have the luxury of being able to own multiple consoles.
All the things, yeah.
Right. That particularly when it comes to Microsoft and Xbox, which historically speaking are $150 to $200 more than a Nintendo console, they kind of have to choose, at least within the first year or two of release. And yeah, if I had been like, I'm a huge Bethesda fan and I'm going to pick Xbox because I want to try Starfield and I want to make sure that I have the console that's going to have the next Elder Scrolls game. And then the company that I gave my money to said, you know what, fuck it, we're going to let these things go to PlayStation 2. Yeah, I'd be kind of pissed off about that too. Not to the level of the vitriol that you've been seeing online over the last 18 hours. But at the end of the day, like, it's an interesting conversation to have because, I think it's interesting to see a company as big as Microsoft that clearly has the ability to compete in the market with Sony and Nintendo. Assuming all of this turns out to be true, right? Because they haven't really confirmed anything themselves. These reports have come out and Microsoft hasn't really said anything.
Phil Spencer, what did he say? I have
we're planning a business event update or business update event for next week where we look forward to sharing more details with you about our vision for the future of Xbox. Stay tuned. So yeah, we'll see you next week as far as more on that. But yeah, it really does make me sort of raise an eyebrow that, like, are they just choosing not to compete anymore? Especially with how sort of bullish they've been over the last few years about acquiring these other companies, right? Like Activision.
Here's the problem is that so when you make a game console, it's not like you whip it up over the weekend and here it is. Like when Sony, Microsoft, Nintendo makes a new box, a new plastic box to put out to the masses. That's a lot of years, a lot of man hours, a lot of money, millions of dollars spent into research and development on these things. And this is now the second year in a row, or the second console generation in a row, rather, where Microsoft has not only found themselves in third, but a distant
but by
third.
A lot.
A distant third. Not even sniffing it. Like, again, so bad is how this is going for them that they don't release sales numbers anymore because of how bad it would look.
Looking up, I'm trying to look up some figures here. So per Ampere analysis, the PlayStation 5 sold 22.5 million units that year. While the Xbox Series X and S combined 7.6 million.
Yeah.
So this may be a situation like where they're looking hard at their console numbers and saying we got to find other ways to make money for our games division.
Or not only that, it's Microsoft. It could be Microsoft's higher ups going to Phil Spencer and saying, if we're going to be a distant third and our focus is on our subscription service, why are we spending this money? Why are we spending these resources to develop these boxes when we can just sell a subscription and put it out everywhere?
Yeah.
And I think that's the logical end result for as much focus as they're putting on Game Pass, is to get out of the hardware business. Maybe not completely. There's rumors now that we could be seeing handheld consoles coming from Sony and Microsoft, down the road here, because now with the Switch and the Steam Deck, like now having a good console experience on the go has become, all the rage again.
Feasible.
Right. Yeah. So maybe not completely out of the mix, but maybe they don't need to have the $500 box anymore. Maybe they don't even need to have the $300 box anymore.
No, ultimately, someone else, Mike Minotti, on Twitter said, if I think that if all Xbox games go to PlayStation, it will eventually lead to the end of Xbox making actual boxes.
Mm-hmm.
Xbox can afford to compete and should. I don't know how well an Xbox console does if its only selling point is Game Pass.
Right.
While PlayStation is where you can play Spider-Man and Indiana Jones and Starfield and Final Fantasy.
Right.
So it makes me curious about how they would then really be able to market Game Pass if there's not really a dedicated system
mm-hmm.
for Game Pass anymore. Obviously there's PC Game Pass as well, but are you going to have, a Game Pass subscription service available through your Nintendo and Sony consoles?
I think
Microsoft,
I think
that would be interesting if that's the way that it happens. But yeah, it almost flies in the face of everything that they've done
mm-hmm.
over the last few years as far as acquiring Bethesda, acquiring Activision, acquiring all of these indies for the sake of having high quality first party games.
Right.
To then say, okay, well, these aren't just going to be first party anymore.
Yeah.
These are going to be for everybody.
Well, and
they'll be first party for us and third party for everybody else.
And that's the thing, like if you're Sony too, like if Microsoft comes to you and is like, look, we're getting out of the hardware business, we want to put Game Pass on PlayStation, you're going to tell me that you get rid of your biggest competitor,
mm-hmm.
and also you get a 30% cut for any Game Pass subs that come through your console. Are you kidding me? Like, yeah, you're making that deal 10 times out of 10. like 100%.
And it's interesting, obviously, the other major company to have gotten out of the hardware business in mm-hmm. games is Sega.
Mm-hmm.
But Sega these days seems to be more stable than ever. They've got a number of solid subsidiaries. Within the last week, Sega published 2 of the biggest games to start the year, that being fucking Persona 3 Reload and Infinite Wealth. Mm-hmm. So, it's not as though Microsoft or Microsoft Games Division or Xbox or whatever the fuck it's going to be called after this would be, assuming if we're operating on the assumption that they are looking for a stable way for them to exit the hardware business without having to shutter, it can obviously be done.
Mm-hmm.
Sega did it, and they're fine these days. Sega as a company is stable. So it's interesting.
Yeah.
That this is sort of the way this is going. This isn't what I really expected to happen with Xbox. But again, we're getting a big update from Uncle Phil next week, so we'll see what happens.
Well, but again, like I think that speaks to changing trends in the industry. I think it speaks, and I think it speaks to just like Mike Minotti is correct. Microsoft has the money to waste on a new box that doesn't sell. Like it's not going to put a major dent into the company's finances. But why the fuck would you if you don't need to? is kind of the point. So this is going to be really interesting.
It's very interesting to me, you know. Within the top 10 selling, like, best-selling consoles of all time, Microsoft only makes one appearance within the top 10.
And that was 2 generations ago.
With the Xbox 360. Which still, in spite of the fact that the PlayStation 3 had such a rough start, PlayStation ultimately still beat Xbox in that generation as well.
Yes, worldwide.
So it's like, Xbox has never, even since entering the market, they have never been able to come out on top. They've always been second fiddle to Sony, and then more recently, you know, second or third fiddle to Nintendo. So it's wild to me to see such a big company that seemingly has such a strong fan base in a lot of ways and a lot of support, really just not be able to convert long term as far as their hardware is concerned. So
and I know why they succeeded out of the gate. I mean, they were the only Western brand in the market when they came onto the scene. They marketed themselves as very counterculture, and they capitalized on a couple really big hits that, you know, that defined the marketplace. Like Halo was the first, like, you can say GoldenEye was the first successful console FPS, and to an extent it was, but I mean, really, Halo was the first Halo. Like mega successful, like the first Megaton one. And they rode that very successfully for a lot of years. But again, consider that, like, Microsoft's console business has been kind of a joke for literally, and you don't think about it, literally the last decade. The Xbox One came out over 10 years ago at this point. So and the Xbox One only ever sold about 58 million compared to the PlayStation 4's 117 million. Like, they've been beaten out 2-1 for the last 2 console generations. Again, PlayStation 5 in total has sold about 50 million. In total, the Series X, about 21 million. So it's like, I'm sure they're looking at the numbers and being like, well, we can't do it. They've never been able to get a hold of the Asian markets. You know, no one in Japan gives a shit about Xbox. And that's, I think, the more concerning number, and again, since Microsoft doesn't report, we don't know for sure. But most months, they're still getting outsold by the 7-year-old Nintendo Switch most months. When we all know that a Switch 2 is inevitably on the horizon sometime in the next 18 months, probably. And that's a conservative estimate. And yet people are still buying the original Nintendo Switch. Maybe not the original, but the OLED version, you know what I mean. But people are still buying a 7-year-old console. Often more in greater numbers than the Xbox console. So can't wait to see what Phil has to say next week.
I'm very curious.
I'm also very curious, Carrie. You have of course been playing Persona 3 Reload. Came out last week. This is the Persona 5ification of Persona 3. One of the most beloved games in the franchise. Tell me, what do you think about
so first of all, to hit right on the heels of the last story, I'm actually playing this on Game Pass on Xbox. My partner has a Series X, and he's got Game Pass, so why would I pay for it when I can play it on Game Pass, right? It's great. I'm past the first 2 story bosses at this point, so I can pretty confidently say this is probably the best version of Persona 3, and I'm sure there are people who are really diehard Persona 3 Portable fans who would disagree with me, but even as someone who likes Persona 3 Portable, the thing about P3P, because it was made for the PSP, was that it really stripped out a lot of, like, the day-to-day life stuff from that game. It turned it into more of, like, visual novel. There's no walking around the school interacting with people, stuff like that. And I really like that stuff in the Persona games. So for as much as I enjoyed the female protagonist route in Persona 3 Portable, I think Reload is just It is overall so clean. It's so polished. Yeah, it's everything I love about Persona 3 to begin with, which is like the cast and the story and the setting and the sort of vibe of that game. But with all of the quality of life upgrades that have come with P5 and P5 Royal. It's a fun little fact about the original version of Persona 3 is that you could not control your party members. You could only control the protagonist. How soon we forget. But yeah, it's very good. It has, I would say, a style reminiscent of P5, especially in like the UI design and the menus and whatnot, but it's still very distinctly its own thing, its own story. I love the way Tartarus plays now. So notably, if you're unfamiliar with Persona 3, there's only one dungeon, and it's called Tartarus, and it's similar to Mementos in P5. You can get so far at a time, and there's like a block, and then you can't go any further until you progress the story to a specific point. But that's the only dungeon in the game. And in the original versions, it was like, okay, cool, well, I guess the floor is purple now. Like, it didn't really look that much different going from zone to zone. Now it really looks different going from zone to zone, and there are different ways that you can sort of interact with the environment now. It's really well done. It's the upgrade that I think P3 most needed, which was like to make the one dungeon that you have to spend all your time in a little bit more fun to be in. Yeah, Persona 3 has always been my favorite of the Persona titles. Yeah, it's really good. Look, if you've got Game Pass, there is no reason you shouldn't be playing it right now. Even if you don't have Game Pass, like you should play Persona 3.
Yeah.
It's really good. It's everything I wanted. It's like it's fresh enough that I don't just feel like I'm playing Persona 3 again, right? Like I've played Persona 3. And it also just doesn't feel like it's trying to ape P5, right? You know, it's obviously it's taken its, you know, certain things from P5, but all the good things from P5, including the music. It's not jazz like P5 was. Persona 3 soundtrack has always been notably a little more like
you know Persona 3 soundtrack to me it's the most like 1998 to 2002 Japanese music soundtrack, because I hear Persona 3 and it immediately makes me think of Street Fighter Third Strike. Like that's
okay.
That's the music that I most.
It's got that kind of like late 90s hip hop flavor to it in a lot of ways, which I really like. They brought back Lotus Juice, who's been involved with the music of the Persona series even since Persona 3, even though you don't really hear him rap on 4 or 5 soundtrack. He's actually been the guy who's been writing most of the English lyrics. Lotus Juice is Japanese, but was born and raised in like New Jersey, which is why his raps tend to sound really good. It's because he's actually like a native English speaker. Whereas, you know, you have a native Japanese speaker doing English raps. It can kind of like the cadence isn't always there. But yeah, the big difference is that the original like female vocalist that they had for Persona 3, Yumi Kawamura, she was not brought back. She's been replaced with Azumi Takahashi. So you're getting new mixes of old stuff with Takahashi's vocals on there. I love and respect Yumi Kawamura. I had the realization the other day, because at first I was like a little salty that they didn't bring her back when they brought back Lotus Juice. And I think I kind of realized that I just think Kawamura is in her 60s at this point. And I just think she physically cannot hit the high end of her range anymore. She's been performing with the Persona live concerts, and you can find some of the more recent ones. Actually, you can find some of the older ones too, on YouTube, and you can hear her doing a lot of these songs live. But I remember watching maybe it was 2022 when they did the live show, and she was either dropping things a full octave in order to keep it within her comfortable range, or she was straining and unable to hit certain notes. So I just, from a pure music perspective, I just don't think she has the range anymore. And I think Takahashi does a really good job with some of these classic Persona tunes, especially like Mass Destruction and some of the sort of walking around town kind of vocal tunes that come up. I also really like the new rap that they wrote for the Iwatodai Dorm song. Notably, the original Iwatodai rap was basically just like samples from some stock pack that they dropped into Shoji Meguro's writing. But they had Lotus Juice write a new rap, and it's good.
Yeah.
Anyway, Persona 3 is really good. If you're playing it, definitely hit me up in the Discord. I would love to get your thoughts. I think for people who were introduced to the Persona franchise through Persona 5, this is an easier way to revisit some of the earlier Persona stories. Persona 4 Golden, I think, still holds up as well, but like I tried going back to Persona 3 kind of recently, and it's just like, it's a little hard to get back into for as much as, like, again, it is my favorite game in the franchise.
And I will
Reload
tell you,
just
as a P5 entrant, I found Golden hard to get into. So the fact that this has more modern sensibilities makes it seem more approachable. I'll probably gonna wait for a sale though, because I've got too much other shit going on right now as far as games go. So, but we'll see on that one. So, but I'm glad to know that it still holds up, and I know that even though there's a lot of Persona 3 fans out there who probably aren't as big of a fan of the changes. So.
I mean, I don't know. I don't understand how anyone could be like upset about things that make the game more fun to play.
Right, and also like if you prefer the original version,
it's still there.
It still exists.
Obviously the PlayStation 2 version hasn't gone anywhere, and you can download Persona 3 Portable on any device at this point. Yeah. The one other thing about Reload. Actually, you know what? I lost it. It's gone. The thought has left my brain.
What a good time to take another break.
It's fine. Yeah, we'll see if it comes back after the break.
All right, so let's get into a supersized edition of the Nens Pixels Post Office, where again you can write in questions that we'll answer on the show by joining our Discord at denspixels.com/fans. So let's start with like the first big news of the week. It came from. You're gonna have to give me the name because it's cutting it off on my Discord on my screen, Carrie.
Oh, all right. Hold on. Let me get to the post office.
I might be able to make this bigger.
Oh my goodness. Tin Man.
There you go.
Yeah. Brad, I'm here to ask, what are your thoughts on the Lewis and Ferrari move? Thinking he did it because he's always wanted to race with them. He's close with Fred Vasseur and knows in 2026 he will have a competitive car.
So, the F1 world was rocked last week when it came out, first as a rumor and then seemingly confirmed in like a couple hours that Lewis Hamilton, after this season upcoming, is leaving Mercedes and joining Ferrari, which is a huge deal, as Lewis Hamilton has been in the Mercedes family really since he came into F1. He started with McLaren, who is a Mercedes partner. They use Mercedes engines in their cars basically, and then he actually went to the Mercedes team proper in 2013, where he then won six world titles with Mercedes. But apparently he's always dreamed of going to Ferrari at some point, because Ferrari is a very, probably the most storied, not probably, they are the most storied Formula One racing franchise out there. And so he, I guess, wants to end his career there. And I've gotten to marinate on it for a couple of days, and I'm still in the same point where I don't understand, aside from Lewis just wanting to fulfill a dream, maybe to race for Ferrari, this doesn't make sense for Ferrari, and it doesn't make sense for Lewis Hamilton. So Lewis, you know, at Mercedes, Mercedes from like, so Red Bull obviously ran away with the title last year. Mercedes and Ferrari and McLaren are kind of in that like second tier behind what Red Bull's doing. There's nothing to suggest so far that Ferrari is going to somehow like push themselves to the front of the pack. So if Lewis's intention is to win another world title, which he's, you know, currently tied for the all-time record with 7, and he'd like to get that record, I'm sure. I don't think Ferrari gives you any better of a chance than Mercedes does, and in fact, in the last couple seasons, Ferrari has looked less reliable, certainly, than Mercedes has. So from a Hamilton standpoint, it doesn't make a lot of sense. From a Ferrari standpoint, they have one of the best young drivers signed to a long-term deal already in Charles Leclerc. He's ostensibly their number one guy. I don't know why you'd bring in a Lewis Hamilton to disrupt that harmony. I don't know why you get rid of a Carlos Sainz, who has been arguably your best driver over the last 2 seasons, and is, again, much younger than Lewis. Lewis is probably only going to stick around Ferrari, I would imagine, for 2-3 years tops, whereas Sainz could easily be a good partner with Leclerc for another 5, 6, 7, 8 years, potentially. Mm-hmm. So it just doesn't make a lot of sense to me on either level, for Lewis or for Ferrari. But it's going to be exciting. It's going to be very weird to see Lewis Hamilton in that red jumpsuit, you know, in that red car, in a couple of years, in a year or so here. And it's also going to make for some very interesting story this year, when you have George Russell, Hamilton's teammate in Mercedes, who's already, you know, really pushing and doesn't give much shit about Lewis. You know, he wants to be the number one dude at Mercedes. So it'll be interesting to see how those guys get on this year. So we'll see. F1's only about a month away. Very exciting.
Before I jump into the next question, I remember what I was going to say about P3. That people were bitching for a while, and many people still are, that it's a remake of the original Persona 3 release. It doesn't include the answer playable epilogue from Persona 3 FES, and it doesn't include the Femme protagonist route from Persona 3 Portable. And there are now reports coming out that like the answer is probably going to release as DLC in the near future as episode Aegis, rather than being called the answer. And I'm kind of expecting more DLC in the future. Like I'm kind of expecting the Femme protagonist route to be available at some point. So that's it. I'm looking forward to all of the content that people have been bitching about not being in Reload, releasing as DLC like I predicted would happen like 3 weeks ago on this podcast. So in any case, Johnny asks, so tell me guys, why should any black man give up his hard-earned spot at Mania for the white boy promoter's kid? On Black History Month of all months, with your bitch asses.
So first of all, if you ask Dwayne Johnson, he's not black. He's Dwayne Johnson. That's number one. So this is obviously Johnny's prompt to talk about the Rock, Cody Rhodes, Roman Reigns fiasco that was created on Friday. So for those not in tune with the wrestling world, so Cody Rhodes came back to WWE 2 years ago, and they've been kind of long playing this like Cody's story of getting to the top of the mountain and becoming the WWE champion. And you know, he came back, wrestled Seth Rollins several times in some very good matches, tore his pec, was out for you know 7 months, came back at the 2023 Royal Rumble, won the match, went to WrestleMania. Everyone thought he was going to dethrone Roman Reigns, who had been champion at that point for 2.5 years. And he fell short. Okay, fell short in the match. So fast forward, like he's you know gone through it this year. You know, being the stalwart babyface, and really like WWE positioning him very much as like the next big babyface guy to kind of carry the company forward, right? So 2023 Royal Rumble comes around, or 2024 rather, last week. Cody Rhodes wins. Go like him and CM Punk go down to the last bit. Cody Rhodes wins, back-to-back Royal Rumble winner for only the 4th time in history. And the tagline is like, he's going to go to WrestleMania, he's going to finish the story. Like that's been the thing he's been saying for the last years. I need to finish the story, and finishing the story is going to WrestleMania and beating Roman Reigns, who again now has been champion for 3.5 years, for almost 1,300 days, which is unheard of in this era. So Cody goes to SmackDown, and he's going to announce his decision of which champion he wants to face at WrestleMania, and he says, Roman, I'm going to finish the story. I'm still going to come for you, but not at WrestleMania. Cue The Rock's music, as there's been a rumored, the Rock versus Roman Reigns match that WWE has been rumoring for forever. Cody literally fucking literally moves aside for The Rock to to square down with Roman Reigns. And the WWE universe lost their collective minds, not in a good way, in reaction to this news. Here's why this, and now caveat, we're recording this before Monday Night Raw, so they have not officially said, hey, it's going to be Rock versus Roman at WrestleMania, and it's going to be Cody versus Seth Rollins, which is the logical match for Cody to have for the World Heavyweight title. Okay? So they have not said that yet. Could change on Monday, don't know. But as it stands right now, it certainly seems like that's the direction that things are headed in. I would expect Cody Rhodes to come out tonight, challenge Seth Rollins, and then you have your two matches for WrestleMania. Here's why this sucks. You have been building this Cody Rhodes story for a couple years. You have clearly positioned him as the next top babyface in the company. And when you have a guy who's had the title for as long as Roman Reigns has had it, you don't want to waste who that goes to. You don't just want to give it to some dude that you're not sure is going to be able to shoulder the load. Like, you want to give it to someone that to fucking put the stamp of approval on them from corporate, to be like, hey, this is the guy moving forward. And Cody Rhodes was absolutely positioned to be that dude. And you have thrown that away for an easy payday. That's what you have done, because they are doing this because Roman Reigns versus Cody Rhodes is not going to get you talked about on E! And on Entertainment Tonight and in on ESPN and stuff like that. Roman Reigns versus The Rock certainly will. It's going to get you talked about in other circles.
Yeah.
The other reason, if you were to believe reporting that this is happening, is because The Rock, who is now a board member of TKO, who is the parent company for the WWE, was concerned that all of the recent Vince McMahon news that has come out about how much of a piece of shit that guy fucking is. Somehow
he got worse.
Yeah, like truly is no bottom, apparently. Was going to overshadow WrestleMania. And so The Rock had to like, again, if you believe this reporting, and I don't know if it's true because wrestling journalism is fucking awful, felt he needed to save WrestleMania. Felt he needed to make sure that WrestleMania was a huge success and insert himself into the main event to make sure that all the focus was on the event and not on anything that going on with Vince McMahon. Mm-hmm. And again, I don't know if that's true or not, but if it is true, it's fucking dumb.
Yeah.
Whether The Rock wins the match or not, by the way, and if he wins, that's a whole other fucking barrel of monkeys that to have to fucking untangle. I don't think he would, but even if but regardless, you have put a damper on a surefire build that we were going to. Micah laid out the basic but very sensible booking for this Cody Rhodes situation last week, and that's what you should have done. Like it's simple, but it's sensible. So I am not happy about this, and I'm not one to normally complain about booking either, by the way. I don't like complaining when we don't see what the destination is, but here we do see what the destination is. Like, we are going to get Roman Reigns versus The Rock, who, by the way, The Rock has not wrestled in a real WWE match for 13 years. No, 11 years at this point. So, and he's just older than he was before. Like, Rock is in his mid mid-50s at this point.
Mm-hmm.
He's going to be in shape, but is he going to be in ring shape? I don't know. Probably not. And neither The Rock nor Roman Reigns are dudes that can carry the load in a match. Like they are two guys who need their dance partner to help them out to put on a really good show. And you're going to relegate Cody to night one. And he's probably going to beat Seth Rollins if he wrestles him. But it's going to feel cheap because that's not the title that Cody Rhodes ought to have. Like he ought to be the WWE champion, not the world champion, because that's the story that they were building towards for all this time. Now it's salvageable. That's the beauty of professional wrestling, is that nothing is written in stone, and they could easily pivot out of this. You could somehow pivot out of a Rock Roman wrestling match at WrestleMania. I don't think that's what's going to happen. You could also make it a triple threat. Like, you could also be like, you could have Cody Rhodes be like, fuck this, I'm finishing the story of WrestleMania. Rock, if you're going to be in my way, but I'm fucking taking that title. And you could still have that moment. But for anyone that's out there saying, like, oh, well, he could beat Roman at SummerSlam, he could beat Roman at, whatever other show. No. Like WrestleMania holds that prominence to have that guy finally achieve the climb to the mountain, and that still exists today. Mm-hmm. I mean, think of all the people who won their first title at a WrestleMania, and that was the final fucking stamp that they needed to be like, this is the fucking guy. You go back to Shawn Michaels, you can go back to Steve Austin, the Yes Movement with Daniel Bryan. Fucking Roman Reigns needed that WrestleMania win to establish himself. Kofi Kingston, like the list goes on and on. And that's why it's a big deal that you had to have Cody Roman at WrestleMania, was because you needed that moment, that event. And you know how I'll prove to you that it's important? Daniel Bryan was a 2-time world champion before the Daniel Bryan moment at WrestleMania. People forget that. People think that was the first time he won the world title. They have Mandela affected themselves into thinking that, because that's how important the WrestleMania match was, even though he was a 2-time world champion in WWE prior to that moment happening. That's how important that moment was. So, yes, could Cody win elsewhere? Yes. Could he still be the guy? Yes. Could he do it at next year's WrestleMania? Sure. But now you have another year of basically running back to the same story that you just literally fucking ran back and then punted on, supposedly. Again, they could pivot. We could see things change. Really now, at this point, like, if you're not going to have Cody win, what I would love more than anything is just to really just fucking make it cheap as possible, and have Damian Priest, who has the Money in the Bank contract, cash that in after Roman Reigns beats The Rock at WrestleMania. Like, that would actually be really funny to me, because if you're gonna waste that opportunity for Cody Rhodes, then truly just throw it out the fucking window at that point, and have Roman get beat on a cheap cash in, as opposed to the moment that you were building towards. So that's all I got to say about that, Carrie. Thank you for putting up with that nonsense for the last 10 minutes.
Of course. Anthony asks, for me, what's your favorite guitar or bass in my collection, and what guitar would I buy if money were no object? I saw this come in, and I was like, I gotta fucking decide what guitar is my favorite. I really don't know. They all have different applications. I have 4 basses. I have a Dan Electro Longhorn. I have 2 Ampeg AMB1s, and I have a Sterling Music Man 5-string. Between the 4 of them, I would say my red Ampeg probably gets played the most. It's got good pickups. I get good tone out of it. It's very comfortable to play. I've had it for a long time. I've had it for almost 20 years now. It's good. I like playing it. I like playing out with it. Of the guitars that I have, my Gretsch is probably my favorite. I have a red Gretsch Duo Jet that I like a lot. I need to take it to get set up because the action's a little high, but that's fine. As far as what guitar I would buy if money were no object, this probably sounds like a bit of a joke answer, but I mean it very sincerely. I want the Shadow the Hedgehog ESP. A few years ago, they made matching Sonic and Shadow. ESP being a Japanese guitar company. ESP made these 2 guitars. They made 2 models of each. One features one's just a little nicer frets, nicer tuners, and it comes with a kill switch. Would I need a kill switch on my guitar? No, but I would want that one anyway because I think it looks cooler. Yeah, I want that Shadow the Hedgehog guitar quite a bit. Those are very difficult to find. They didn't make that many of them. And I think they were in the realm of like 1,500 when they even came out. And they're probably more like 2,500 now. I don't have $2,500 to just piss away on a guitar, but I would play it. I like ESPs. It's kind of a super strat. So I like it a lot. Now, ESP is getting ready to come out with a new Sonic guitar. They announced it last year. They still have not opened pre-orders on it yet. But it's a different kind of design for it. Rather than having, character artwork on there, it has like sort of sketches of Sonic, like classic Sonic, 90s Sonic. I kind of want that one too. And the thing about that one is that if I get that one, I could at least order it in a way where it's like I would just be paying monthly for it rather than having to shell out $2,000 all at once. So maybe we'll see. Last thing I need is another guitar. Like between my partner and I, we have like 5 guitars and 5 basses in this house. It's too much. Really don't need that many. But they all do something different. Same question for you, but for watches, Brad.
It's like trying to say who's your favorite child, honestly. It's kind of where it is. The watch that's bringing me the most joy right now is probably my Lurier Hyperion. Lurier is a micro brand watchmaker. Okay. Who makes watches that are very intentionally designed to kind of harken back to like the 1960s, 1970s designs of men's sports watches. And the Hyperion is kind of a modern take on a Rolex GMT, which is probably my favorite single watch that is out there. So I really like that. I'm a sucker for a GMT watch. It's also like the Lurier is what they call a true GMT. So like a normally more affordable GMTs. So the way a GMT watch works is it has 2-hour hands. It has 1-hour hand that you set to local time, which is the main hour hand, and then it has a GMT one that you set to your home time. It's meant to be like a travel watch, right?
Okay.
And most inexpensive GMTs, you move the thing that moves when you pull the crown out to the first position is it moves the travel hand, right? Which actually doesn't make sense because you don't want to have to stop the watch to reset the time of the place you're traveling to. You want to have to set it for your home time, but it's just right. It's more expensive to make movements that do that, right? But a true GMT, when you instead of moving like you set the GMT hand to your home time. And a true GMT moves the actual hour hand on the watch independent of the rest of the watch movement, which is how it's supposed to work. Is that way, like if you go to the West Coast, you take your actual hour hand, you set it back 3 hours, your GMT hand set to home time. You can see both times at the same time. So that's my favorite watch that's in my collection right now. What would I buy if money were absolutely no object? What is like my dream watch to have? That's a tough one because there's a sensible choice and then there's like a fuck money choice, I would say. The sensible choice would be to get a Rolex, like an actual like Rolex 1960s GMT. That's still in good condition. They're very expensive nowadays though. My fuck money choice is from a German manufacturer called A. Lange & Söhne, who make really fucking nice luxury watches, and the one that I would get from them would be a Lange 1, which is their kind of basic, time, hour, and date watch, but it's just a very handsome watch. I've gotten to handle one in person, which is very cool. Like I said, it's a very cool watch to see up close. It's also got a really intricately designed movement as well, and it has a display back so you can see the movement, which is pretty cool. But the watch costs like $90,000, so it's not something that I'm gonna be affording anytime soon. In this day and age, or any other, for that reason, because it would be frankly even if I had the money, it would be irresponsible to buy that watch for me.
For both of us, also still from Anthony, latest random purchase that's bringing you joy. For me, it's probably the couch that I bought for the front room of this house in California that I now live in. I've referred to it as my divorce money couch. It's the nicest piece of furniture I've ever purchased. It's extremely comfortable. It's very soft. It's very cozy. It's almost like it's like a daybed more than a couch, really. Mm. It's like imagine two Chase loungers next to each other. That's what this couch is. It's the perfect little cozy spot for me in this house. I can easily access my record player, so I can put on a record and then not have to get all the way up and like walk somewhere to flip the record or anything like that. It's nice. I like it a lot.
For me,
I also it's not here yet, but I also I got like a $200 Amazon gift card from work. Because like the whole company did well, so everybody got a $200 Amazon card for like an extra bonus, basically. I'm not fucking complaining. And I used some of that for things for the house, but then I spent a little bit of it on the Shadow the Hedgehog motorcycle Lego set because I haven't built a Lego set in a long time. I've always really liked Legos. I was like, you know what? It's $20. I'm doing this for me. So that's something else.
I have two incredibly practical recent purchases that are bringing me a lot of joy right now. So the first one, we used to have like the big, heavy upright vacuum that we used to lug around the house. We finally broke down and bought a stick vacuum. We bought like a Shark stick vacuum, and I got to tell you, that thing fucking rocks. It's nice and light, super easy. It's completely wireless. That's awesome. Also, it's the first self-propelling vacuum that I've ever had, which is very weird when you first start using that for the first time. To have it kind of want to move itself, and you're like, oh, I don't have to actually push. Like, holy shit! Like this is kind of hard to control. So that's been fucking great. The other one is my CPAP machine, which I finally got a couple of weeks ago. Because let me tell you, folks out there, if you have sleep apnea, and you've been apparently living with sleep apnea for probably several years at this point, I would imagine, when you actually start getting like a good night's sleep. It's amazing. Like it's like you're like, holy shit, like I had no idea this is what sleep could be like. This is fantastic. So yeah, CPAP machine has been working really well, and I've been nice and energized in the morning. I don't fall asleep on the recliner in the middle of the day anymore, taking old man naps or anything like that, because I actually am getting restful sleep throughout the night, and not stopping breathing 30 some odd times an hour, apparently. Apparently.
Oh, did you do a sleep study?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. It's nice to get to sleep through the night and not be tired all the time.
Yeah.
And so this is something I have also been experiencing lately, because when I was still living in Maryland, especially 2022, 2023, I was napping a lot. I was tired all the time. And it's not because I have sleep apnea, but it's because I was living with someone who I didn't want to live with anymore. And I was depressed. And it turns out when you get yourself out of a bad situation, your physical health starts to improve with your mental health, and you don't need to take a 2-hour nap every fucking day anymore. It's amazing. So I'm glad you got a CPAP machine, though.
Me too.
It's great. That's exciting. One other last question from Anthony. Brad, what's the latest board game you played?
Last night, my wife and I played a new game that we just got called Lacuna, which is a a very quick 2-player, like a spatial reasoning game. It's hard to describe without seeing it. Like if you look up the game online, LACUNA, you'll understand what I'm talking about. The game takes place on this like 3-foot by 3-foot mat, and the components are these 7 little wooden flowers that come in 7 different colors and designs. And you literally like the game comes in like a canister. You literally just like sprinkle them all over the mat, right? And you're trying to collect a majority of the colors. So there's 7 colors. Each color has 7 flowers. So you want to have a majority of 4 of the colors, essentially.
Okay.
And the way the game works is you have 6 pieces. Like each player has 6 pieces. You take turns placing them on the mat. And when you place a piece, you place it in between 2 flowers that are the same color that don't have anything in between them, right? And when you place it, you take both flowers off the board, you put them in your little supply, and the next player takes a turn. The thing that makes it interesting is that once each player has placed their piece on the board, all their pieces on the board, then you look at the remaining flowers, and for each flower left on the board, whoever's piece is closer to that flower gets to claim it. So when you're placing your pieces, you not only have to think about what pieces you want to grab, but you have to think about placing it next to other pieces that you want to then collect, but hope that your opponent doesn't like steal them from you during the game by actually directly taking them. So it's a fun little game. It only takes like 15 minutes to play. And we got it last weekend, and we played it like 3 times already since we got it, which is very fun.
Nice.
We'll take one more quick break, and then we'll be back with the rest of the questions.
All right, we're back, and right back into the post office. Matt Coco G asks, perfect timing. Thoughts on Jason's big news? We already touched on this. Jason Schreier's doing a new book. Yeah. It's called Play Nice, based on interviews with 350 plus individuals. This will tell the story of how 2 UCLA students built a video game empire, from the rise of World of Warcraft to the Activision takeover to a sexual misconduct scandal and eventually a $69 billion acquisition by Microsoft. Going to be out in October of this year. Look, Jason Schreier doesn't fucking miss. He has also already said he is rewriting the ending.
that was my question was gonna be, I hope he hasn't turned in the final manuscript yet.
No. No, it's like you can pre-order the book now, but yeah, homie is already let me pull up exactly what he said today. Yes, I've been quietly working on Play Nice for the last 3 years. It's a relief to finally be able to talk about it. And yes, I'm currently rewriting the ending to include the events of last month. So,
yep. I will say this. I've read both of Jason Schreier's prior books. If you're someone who likes to get kind of a peek behind the curtain of the game industry, they are must-reads. I highly recommend them. I know one was called Blood, Sweat, and Pixels, and I think the other one was called Press Reset, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
So, yeah, both excellent books that I highly recommend you guys check out if you have not done so yet.
Carrie's specific question. Thoughts on Big Robert Liefeld's "I'm retiring from Deadpool" announcement? I mean, who gives a shit? He hasn't really been in control of Deadpool for much of the last 33 years. You know, it's like they'll bring him back to do a cover now and again, but it's not like he's been regularly doing Deadpool for most of the time. So who gives a shit? Deadpool's generally been better off in other people's hands anyway. He can go back to badly drawing feet, I guess. Tiwash asks, was there a game you mostly saw negative opinions about it, but when you played it, you'd enjoyed it?
Oh, yeah. Several. I mean, and we've talked about them on the show before. Look, Mass Effect Andromeda has a lot of problems. It was still really fun to play when it came out, in my opinion. And in Mike's opinion, too, for that matter, quite frankly.
Fallout 76 for me.
Yeah.
Look, I put like 100-something hours into that game. It's not currently installed on my computer, but you know, I wouldn't be upset to go back to it. And they've been so good about like keeping that game updated and making it better, especially after how poorly it was generally received. But like, I had fun in 76 for a couple months after that game first dropped. So we'll see.
Yep.
Cam asks, the Super Bowl is coming up, and when we see the big premiere trailers for movies and TV shows. Do you all think video game companies are missing out by not ponying up the money to advertise during the big game, or is it simply not a cost-effective strategy for most gaming companies?
What does the Super Bowl live go for these days? Like $6 million for a 30-second spot or something like that? I mean, and there have been game companies.
30-second.
Go ahead.
A 30-second spot at this year's game, about 7 million, according to Ad Age.
So I swear there's been gaming ads during the Super Bowl before. Like I swear Fortnite has probably done one.
I feel like you've gotten some of your like AAA titles talked about there, but it's one of these things where obviously it's not like there's no crossover between video game people and sports people. I am a prime example of someone who is both a sports person and a video game person. But I'm also probably not watching the Super Bowl because I don't give a shit about football. But I'm a hockey and baseball person. We know this. It's the idea that like I really don't think it's the most cost effective. Just in so much that I don't think you're reaching a majority of your target audience.
Right.
To advertise what? The new Assassin's Creed? Like what? It's a weird time of year to be advertising too, right? You know, summer is a big blockbuster time for films and whatnot, but not necessarily a big blockbuster time for the games industry. You're normally getting your huge games in the lead up to Christmas.
Right.
Rather than, you know, May, June, July. So yeah, it's just like what would even be advertised?
Yeah.
You know? So
agreed.
Yeah, I don't think it would be cost effective. Other question for me, Carrie's a fellow Fallout nerd, so I wanted to hear how optimistic or pessimistic you are about the upcoming Fallout series. Based on what I've seen, I think it looks really good. I'm looking forward to seeing it. I'm definitely going to be watching. So, Johnny then asked, Carrie, what's the general consensus on Kraden and Golden Sun? He seems like an Obi-Wan or Mr. Exposition dump, but he's becoming quite annoying. Ugh. Yeah, Kraden sucks, dude. He's like one of the biggest complaints that people have about the Golden Sun series is too much text to read through, and Kraden is a big reason why you have so much text, because like he's basically like this old man who got kidnapped with one of the other characters at the start of the first game, and so by the time you have him sort of like in your party, so to speak, just like he's there, he's not an active like combat party member, but he's there the whole fucking time. So if you're playing through the Lost Age, dude, I'm sorry, Kraden sucks and there's nothing you can do about it. Kraden's the worst part about the Lost Age. He's also the worst part about Dark Dawn. This is why the first game is the superior choice. It's the best one in the series.
I'm just picturing this guy as like a Grandpa Simpson type character.
Yeah.
Just kind of running through like, so there I was with an onion on my belt, which was the style at the time.
Yeah, it's just one of these things. It's like he's this old, wizened alchemist and whatnot. And so in a lot of ways, he is there as a way for the game to like explain directly to the player certain concepts and whatnot. Because it's like, oh, here's this old man who's smarter than the party members who would know these things, right? One of those old kind of tropey kind of characters. But no, like he's annoying and he sucks. No, you're not going to get any argument from me. Kraden sucks. And there's nothing you can do about it. I'm sorry. The rest of the game is really good, but Kraden sucks. And then Gerards just says, I just want to give my beautiful wife, Casey, a shout out for being an awesome mom and wife. Also wanted to welcome my newest daughter, Sasha, to the world too. Appreciate you all for your awesome work on the podcast as always. Well, thank you very much.
Mazel tov.
Congrats on the offspring. Hope everything's well and everyone's safe and healthy and whatnot. I ain't got kids, so that's all I can really.
Agreed. I did not know that Gerard recently had a little one come to the world. So congratulations, man. So what a wholesome way to end this week's show. The rest of you savages out there put nonsense in the box. Look, thank you guys for your questions this week. A nice wide variety of stuff to talk about on the post office and helping us pad out, like I said, what was a relatively light news week. So that was very cool. Yeah.
That's I think all we got, man. I got an album coming out. Well, it's an EP coming out in a couple weeks. It's called This Is Persona. You can pre-order it right now.
I thought it was out. There's the pre-order up.
The pre-order's out.
Okay.
Yeah, so you can pre-order it, and you get one track. You get our cover of Wiping All Out from Persona 3 Portable. It's the battle theme written specifically for that game, and it is not present in Persona 3 Reload. So if you want to somehow mod your game, I don't fucking know. Or just, you know, every time you get into a battle, you can just press play on our version. It features Lacey Johnson on co-vocals with me. I like to think we did a pretty good job. But the full thing comes out in a couple weeks. Yeah, if you are Persona maxing, Atlas pilled right now, whatever the fuck you want to call it, give us a listen over at buyscore.bandcamp.com.
And I will remind all you PC nerds out there that a new Steam Next Fest just started today. So if you want to check out some demos for some upcoming, especially indie games, give her a look. I
have my Steam library open now.
I downloaded 8 demos today at work, possibly.
Holy shit! Jesus Christ.
So we'll see how that goes. But that's it for us this week. Thank you guys very much for watching and listening, and we'll see you all the next time.
See ya.
You're watching the Dense Pixels YouTube channel. Click the subscribe button while you're here, and make sure you check out our weekly podcast where we discuss the latest gaming news and our impressions on what games we've been playing.